Hello and welcome to the Sandip Roy Show on Express Audio.
The Sandip Roy Show.
It's the only Indian city that became a verb. Not a very complimentary verb, but a verb nonetheless. In the days of outsourcing, you could say you had been Bangalored, which meant your job had moved to India, to a place like Bengaluru. Bengaluru was becoming famous as the back office of the world. But now, when we think of Bengaluru, we think more about it being India's startup capital and tech hub. But amidst all that startup excitement, there are worrying signs that this is a city that's grown too fast, too quickly. Its traffic snarls and water problems are almost as legendary as its startup fever. A new book takes a deep dive into how Bangalore became the Bengaluru of today and what makes it so unique among Indian cities. Basically, what's the secret sauce that makes Bengaluru Bengaluru, and can you bottle it and take it elsewhere? Unboxing Bengaluru, the City of New Beginnings, is a deep dive into the city by longtime business journalist Malini Goyal and venture capitalist Prashant Prakash. Malini Goyal joins us on this show. Malini Goyal, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sandip, and lovely to be here speaking to you, and thanks for the opportunity.
A really basic question before we try to decipher what makes Bengaluru unique. Why did Bangalore, as it was known then, not Mysore, become the capital of Mysore state in 47 after independence?
Now, the way Bangalore and Bengaluru now became the capital city itself tells you so much about the city and its existence and its origins. So yes, Mysore was once upon a time the capital of during the British time, right? And they occupied the prime space. But I think the location of the British cantonment here and range of other reasons why at that point of time the decision was taken to locate it here. And remember that the reason why Karnataka state was born, carving out different aspects from different principalities, right, around it, was because of the Kannada language. And imagine a city which was polyglot, right, which had people from every part. And Kannada itself, being the state language, it had a journey. It didn't happen overnight. And there was a fight for it. And then eventually, after some time, Kannada was recognized as the state language. In fact, I remember reading about it that Mysore, Maharaja and all that, they all wanted Mysore to be the prime sort of capital, right? But that didn't happen. And Bengaluru became the capital city.
In fact, one of the sort of lovely factoids I learned from your book was that the Mysore Maharaja, the Wadiyars, invited experts like a German botanist to oversee the greening of Bengaluru in such a way that the city would be in constant bloom. At every season, something or the other would be blooming in the city. Is that still true of Bengaluru?
Yes, it is true. Even though the green cover of the city is gone, dramatically reduced. And, there is a famous IISC sort of chart tracking the increasing deforestation, deplantation within the city and concretization of it. And yet the blooming of the flowers continues. Intensity of it has come down, but the most beautiful part is, I think, the early year, right? Which is the January, February, March, that time when you see the city in full bloom. It's the dabebuyas, the pink flowers and all kinds of flowers there. It really makes the city look beautiful.
So the reason I brought up the trees and all of that is because, of course, Bengaluru has this reputation of a garden city, pensioners' paradise, lovely weather and all of that. And now we think of Bengaluru as a tech hub. But I was curious, did tech build the Bengaluru we know now? Or was there something about Bengaluru that actually helped build tech?
So, there are multiple reasons, Sandip, why this city became the tech hub. And I think we might want to go back as long back as, say, early 20th century or even prior to that. IISC, think about it, setting up IISC in colonial times, pre-independence era in 1908 or 9, that era. And actually the conversation began in late 19th century to set it up. I mean, who thought about setting up a scientific institution like IISc in that time? But it began then. IISc was set up, and a lot of things that, right from the PSU to many other, at that point of time, things that we thought was tech-led, right, science-led, emanated out of this city. And that continued. I think Mysore Maharaja did play a role, that IISc came up on a land that was gifted away. Even the HAL that was set up, it is the example of one of the earliest example of venture capital being given away by way of free land, free electricity, to set that up. Now, in today's context, it doesn't mean too big, right? I mean, people do that. But to be able to do that at a time when India was really a third world colony, that is impressive. Right after the independence, many of the high-tech institutions from ISRO to many other labs, this was the city where it was located. Combination of reasons. One, I think many strategic sort of institutions like DRDO labs and electronic labs, etc. This was the city far away from the borders, right? And that was a reason why they were located here. But also I'm told that this was the city where talent was available. Top talent were willing to come, willing to locate. So a lot of PSUs between 50s, 60s, 70s came here. And remember, this was the PSU era for the economy. And PSUs hired India's top talent from IITs, etc. And at that point of time, IITs were the most meritocratic. I remember talking to one executive. He was one of the earliest founders of Wipro's software business. And he returned from the US and he wanted to be in Hyderabad. He is from Hyderabad and he wanted to locate there. But for multiple reasons, Wipro decided to set up its software center here. And he had to move from Hyderabad to here. And then he remembers the city was bustling with all the labs, everything. This was the hub in 60s and 70s.
In fact, you're right, Malini. I think that unlike Delhi, where the techies were sort of second-class citizens and politicians and bureaucrats were the elite, Bengaluru was a place where techies were actually on the top of the hierarchy.
Yes, that's true. And you know what hasn't changed, Sandip? And I'll come to the third reason, but I'll just want to close the loop on this one. What hasn't changed is this creme de la creme flocking to the city. So 60s, 70s was about PSUs. During the 80s, for a combination of reasons, Infosys, which started in Pune, came to Bangalore. Wipro, which was actually, Premji was located in Bombay, right? Mumbai now. He decided to move to Bangalore. All these companies came here and this city again became the hub of the next wave of tech revolution. It was IT outsourcing. India was a third world country. We were playing cost arbitrage, labor arbitrage game. I understand all that. But yet, remember, 80s, this was the aspirational job. India was making itself visible on the world map as a world housekeeping back office, tech back office, right? But yet, this city was offering the dollar dreams when dollar dreams were really what India's middle class, well-qualified engineers were seeking, aspiring for. Now this is the 90s and 90s to 2000s and the city was reinventing itself. The startup. So early 2000, if I remember correctly, the dot-com bust that happened in the US, this place attracted a lot of NRIs and Indians who were based in the US, right? In the Silicon Valley and different aspects of tech industry, they lost their job, got laid off. And early 2000, late 90s saw a big inflow of Indians and later even expats making their way back to the country. And many of them chose Bangalore. In fact, during the conversations that I've had for the book, many people that I've met, they had zero connection with Bangalore. They were mostly from Delhi, Bombay or other cities and chose Bangalore for multiple reasons. And remember, early 2000 was the time that R&D centers began to be set up. MNCs were looking to India to set up their R&D centers. This was also the time India was a boom country. Our economy was on a rise. India was part of the BRICS economy. The sky was the limit for us. I remember I was working in Seattle in 2005 and, there was just so much intrigue, so much excitement about India in Seattle, right? What you guys are doing. And Bangalore had happened. Bangalore had become a verb. Nandan Nilekani was making headlines. Thomas Friedman book was making headlines. All that was happening. And MNCs were setting up their R&D centers.
Who was the first big one? Was it Texas Instruments?
Yes. So Texas Instrument actually came in the 80s and it was actually the first MNC to set up here. And it was really at the bottom of the tech pyramid. It was really low cost. But, slowly it moved up. In the 90s, I remember being a journalist and working out of Delhi. NCR was emerging as a call center hub of the country. GE Capital, American Express, all the call centers were emerging in Gurgaon. But all the R&D centers were coming here. So GE call center was in Gurgaon. GE R&D center was in Bangalore. So again, the city had begun to reposition from a labor cost arbitrage, IT outsourcing game that began in the 80s and 90s was now turning into this R&D back office of the world in the early 2000, late 2000. Alongside that, around 2007-8, the startup boom had begun to happen. Not startup boom, but startups had begun to sort of make their early moves. Flipkart was born. Many other startups were born. In fact, many of the startups were actually born in other parts of the country, and their founders chose to move here. And then, of course, the startup boom happened in early 2014-15, around that time. All these startups that were happening here were almost a replica of the world. Flipkart, Amazon of the India, right? Ola, Uber of India. So things like that. The next phase was 2015-16 onwards, when many startups that are beginning to happen in the country were also thinking afresh of new problems, India-specific solutions. They were deep tech. And then early seeds were being sown here, which is continuing right now, right? 2015-16 was also the time Aadhaar happened. Digital revolution happened because of cell phone penetration, Geo coming in, democratizing access to data and phones. And that was a big pivotal moment for the startup industry, which the momentum is only gaining now. There is space tech, there is fintech, there is health tech. Bangalore is beginning to position itself in those spaces. So that's the journey in terms of how the evolution has happened over the years and how the city has constantly kind of trying to keep
reposition
and keep pace with the change. That is the beauty of it. See, if the city was stuck with IT outsourcing, that game is over, or not over, but that game has peaked.
But in trying to keep pace, do you see the city now as, for example, getting onto the AI phase that is happening, because a city like Hyderabad is aggressively trying to woo AI?
So there are two questions you are asking. One is that you are asking, how is Bangalore prepping for the future? AI is a critical component. That is one. And second is different hubs tech hubs are emerging. Hyderabad is definitely one of them. And how is Bangalore positioned vis-a-vis some of the emerging competition? And I'll answer in both parts. One is that how is Bangalore positioning itself for the future? I'll give you one example to illustrate where I'm coming from. So I didn't know defense tech, but remember the defense industry is going through a kind of disruption and reordering, which say automobile industries are undergoing, which is the hardware is becoming a commodity. It's a software where all the value add, all the differentiation, all the edge that companies are getting is coming. Tesla is all about that. Now, you don't think of Bangalore when you think of defense, right? Except for DRDO, some labs and ISRO, etc., right? Now, I was talking to Manu Pabbi, who has tracked defense for a very long time. Annually, Defense Ministry conducts a competition for defense tech startups. Majority of the startups are coming from Bangalore. It's obvious. The technology, if you have a technology layer to compete, then this is the place where you will get the densest of talent supply that is possible. That is point number one. Second, the ecosystem that exists here. Even if government is trying very hard to build other hubs in the country, like MP, where I remember it's Indore or Bhopal, there is a defense company that does explosives. It set up its new unit where it is tech-led in Bangalore and not in the home base in Madhya Pradesh. Gujarat government has tried very hard. UP is trying very hard to build a defense corridor. But this is not my information, but this is what Manu was telling me, that while the government has been pushing, nudging the new investment to go to specific location, companies are like automatically coming here simply because they're not finding talent, or talent is not as willing to locate to some of those new locations that they are so willing to hear. On the AI, I'll come to that. So yes, Hyderabad has been pitching itself, but just earlier this week, I was there at a evening where Nandan Nilekani and many other people had come together to build a roadmap on AI for India. And it was powerful to see what these guys were imagining, what India's roadmap, India's journey on AI will be, which their proposition is should be distinct from the arms race, quote unquote, arms race that is building out with OpenAI, etc., globally in Silicon Valley. Now, will Bangalore be completely comprehensively as big a leader as possible? One doesn't know. Now, the second point I want to come to is, of course, there is competition. Competition is good. I think our cities suffer from lack of focus, lack of attention from political class, from bureaucratic class in the way they should be, right? And all our cities suffer. But from the peak that Bangalore was, where it was the numero uno, and now where it is, I think the startup revolution should spread, not just to Hyderabad, NCR, others, but even the tier 2 cities. That is beginning to happen. It's a good thing. But I want you to look at Silicon Valley to get a sense of how things might play out. Silicon Valley has hazard challenges, homelessness, this, I think. It has many challenges, but think of all the AI stuff that is happening out of the US. It is happening out of Silicon Valley, right? For a variety of reasons. I mean, we thought Austin will become important, but somehow Silicon Valley is where all the AI stuff is happening. So while at a percentage level, the quantum of venture capital that is being deployed globally, Silicon Valley has a lesser share today than it had in the past. It is still remains the numero uno of the world as far as tech capital is concerned. I think at least for the foreseeable future, I see, Sandip, that continuing unless we mess up horribly, whatever.
And when you talked, Malini, about these different stages of Bengaluru's development, from PSUs to back office to the world to startup capital of India, and you said, companies like Infosys based out of Pune, but then choosing to move to Bengaluru. You said they were for a variety of reasons, and you outlined many of these reasons in your book, for example, quality of life, weather, cost of living, the sort of talent and tech infrastructure that, so I was wondering if it's those same reasons that cause each wave to come here, or did they have unique reasons?
So I'll put it again in two parts, Sandeep. One is there are some reasons that remain a constant. I was talking to people who came here in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and few reasons haven't changed all the while, which is so amazing to hear. Speak to women who came here in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And not just women, but men as well, especially down south. This felt like the dream city for all of them. A dream city with a very liberal, cosmopolitan environment where you could hang around. There was a safety factor. Like women spoke about how they could wear sleeveless and step out. And it was okay. They were not being judged. They could hang around with their boyfriends late night and it was okay. They could smoke and they were not being judged. I remember somebody talking about who came here in the 80s and 90s. This was like a dream city for them, and he was coming from Kerala. And that hasn't changed. I still talk to young girls coming from up north, and they talk about this factor. I myself have experienced it. I come from Delhi. I've lived there for 35 years. I think coming from Delhi, one of the biggest difference that I feel is the safety and relative safety. Everything is relative in life. The relative safety, in Delhi, late at night or even while later, after dark, I don't think I can walk alone. I will not walk alone. I will take out my car. I will drive in my car. Even if it's a short 5 minutes drive, I will never walk. Even if the city is safe, the fear, the anxiety plays on your mind to shape your behavior, right? It did that. And initially when I came here, I would not walk. If I had to walk at night, I would have this overhang of stress at the back of my head that no, I can't do this. Now I walk easily, walk in dark when it's dark. I think those are very important. Second is that you don't get ogled and stuff. For a woman, it's a big thing, right? Of course, a bit of that is changing, but those are very, very important things. So cosmopolitan, open, liberal environment where you could be yourself, that's something that has been constant. Weather, of course, is icing on the cake. What has not changed is globally when people are looking to India to move. And that wave is only going through a more stronger sort of surge. It goes through its peaks and troughs. But when they look from overseas and want to relocate to India, this looks like the city uppermost on their mind. Either its culture, its language, its job opportunities, and reasons are changing.
And lack of in-laws.
Yes, I'll come to that. So, this city in the 90s and early 2000, and I'm speaking from being a reporter who was looking at job market, who has looked at job market for over 25 years. Early 2000, late 90s, Mumbai and Delhi were the job hub. NCR were the job hub of the country. Today, if you look at almost every sector, not just tech, every sector you think about, Bangalore is amongst the top 2, top 3, sometimes the top employment creator in the country. Look at construction, infrastructure, multiplier effect from salons to etc. This is the employment hub and far bigger than what it was in the past and rapidly closing gap with Delhi or Bombay or maybe outpacing them. The velocity of change is that big. And the one thing that I hear often is that, if a couple is wanting to relocate in this city, chances of both the husband and wife or couple being able to find a relevant and exciting job is far higher in this city than any other city. And that becomes a very, very important reason why many of them choose to locate there. So employment has become a very, very big factor now why people are. And today, young people, because technology is now a horizontal, it's not a vertical anymore. Almost entire sector after sector is going through a digital sort of disruption, right? Because of that, this city has a bigger role to play, right? I mean, think of infrastructure. Who would think digital will play a role, right? Or many other sectors like automobile industry. Pune is the hub, not Bangalore. But almost all the R&D centers of global tech auto companies are located here. This is the EV hub of the country. Now, whatever, serendipitously or whatever, it has emerged, right?
You use the term serendipity engine in your book to sort of characterize the feel of how things lead to each other. But when you were talking about these people and their attraction to Bangalore, as you say, these are highly skilled people. This is an urban to urban sort of elite migration, not rural to urban necessarily. These people can switch jobs from Seattle to Bangalore or wherever and be comfortable in these places. But in your book, you also focus on this other class of migrants who come to Bangalore to support this elite. They are the poor, the unskilled, illiterate, and they come here because this city offers a better living than Manipur or Midnapur in West Bengal or wherever. Can you talk a little bit about how Bengaluru is for the poor migrant, what they face?
Absolutely. So I will tell you two things. One, I want to just sort of double down on the serendipity bit, and which I would want to mention because that to me really stands out about the city. There are 2-3 things that hits me and it hits me in a very positive way when I look at the city. One is the culture of the city, right? And I call it the 2G hardware and 5G software of the city, right? And you notice it often. And I'm again comparing it with Delhi, where I've lived for a very long time, and other cities that I have exposure to, which are like Bombay, etc. I find this is an extremely networked city. While it has grown so rapidly, the chances of you going to a conference and not encountering anybody that you know is almost zero. It's extremely networked city, and those networks intersect at many levels. And that creates this positive, virtuous cycle of engineering serendipity, which is so important in today's networked world. Second thing that you notice is...
Can I stop you there, Malini? And as a follow-up, just ask you, when you say it's a networked city, and you talk in your book about the Yahoo mafia and so on and so forth, and as somebody who is not who came to the city from Delhi, these networks are not cliquey and clubbish, as in difficult to break into, which is true of many other cities, including Kolkata, where I am.
Absolutely. So, the reason, one, it's relatively easier to break into these networks. Remember that this is one of the most meritocratic, still, city in the country, right? This is also a city of migrants. So almost everybody is an outsider, and you come and you become part of the clique or whatever clique exists, right? So one, these cliques are more meritocratic and are newly formed and relatively open, not insular and closed. And many examples. I'm going to pick one and tell you this. So I was talking to Ather Energy. Ather is a EV company, Tarun Mehta. And he incubated his startup in Chennai, IIT Chennai, with zero connection, zero route to this city, right? And then he reached out random to Flipkart founder. This is around 2014. No connection. 2014, Flipkart was big. Sachin Bansal replied, and they organized, they met. And he came to Bangalore, he met Sachin Bansal, and then Sachin Bansal said, persuaded him to move to Bangalore. And he made enough impression that Tarun decided to move to Bangalore. That happened. And sometime later, Tarun was struggling to raise funds. He had staked his personal money. He had taken whatever personal loan he could. He had run out of any more options, right? And as a last option, he sent a message to Sachin. And remember, there is no connection between Sachin and Tarun. Nothing. And he remembers that day. And he said it was a big billion-day sales. And he knew that Sachin would be drowning in work. He will probably not even look at his cell phone. And he sent him a WhatsApp message. Within an hour, he got a message. Come see me. He went and saw Sachin. And not just that, on the spot, he almost got the entire funding that he needed. Now tell me, what does it tell you? I mean, this is not a solo example. This is not an exception. I have 1,000 examples to tell you. And this I've heard from so many people. In fact, what it tells me is something, and I'll quote you back to you, which from the book where I noted this because it struck me. It said, in traditional business in India, you invest in family, the insiders. But in Bengaluru, the first generation founders like Sachin Bansal invested in each other, the outsiders, and they built that loop in the ecosystem, right? So that's one thing, right? So which you see this network effect play out. But the other thing that you also realize is people are very collaborative, relatively much more collaborative than you find in any other city. Think of any big private sector, socially minded projects that have taken off. Think of Bengaluru Science Gallery. It's a bunch of people coming together to make it happen. It's not like NMACC in Mumbai where Ambanis have built it. It's a beautiful project. But it's the Ambani project, right? Here, multiple people joined hands to make things happen.
Why is this? It's the same people. I mean, these are the same Indians. These are people who have founded companies. They're worth tons of money. Why are they able to check their egos at the airport baggage counter?
Yeah, so I've noticed it and I've thought about it. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2-3 examples before I dive into. One was Bangalore International Center, right? Government has got nothing to do with it. In Delhi, you'll find a government building up something, right? And government plays a big role in public spaces, nurturing them. Here, a bunch of people came together to make that happen. In fact, even unboxing DLR and what we are doing today, Sandip, I don't think where we are like doing many things. We are trying to build a museum, India's first startup tech innovation museum. We did a city festival in December last year. We want to make it India's biggest festival in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'll give you this Habba, right? December festival that we did, December 1st to December 11th. We had 2 months, 8 weeks to prep for it. We were completely not equipped. I can tell you that. And मुझे तो नहीं लग रहा था हमसे हो पाएगा. And suddenly everybody just came together. V. Ravichandar, who is Bangalore International Center founder, he came on board pro bono as a sort of festival director. The government joined hands. to make this happen. And almost all key city cultural stakeholders just came on board. And in those 8 weeks, on December 1st to 11th, we had 50 plus partners, 60 plus venues, 500 plus events that happened in the city. I don't think that was possible in any other city simply because of that. Now, coming to the question, why does it happen? I think one is the nature of the startup industry. Remember that everybody's fighting a problem for the first time and they are in deep water. There is no my baap here to save you. You can only tug at each other, seek each other out and get help. And I've heard plenty of stories about startup founders shutting down in deep depression, funds gone sort of dried up, and they don't have a solution. They have each other to support.
In fact, even though from the outside it seems like this glamorous, exciting world of startups, you actually quote people in the book saying many of them quit startups because they found it hard to get married. They used up all their money was in the startup.
Yeah. So, that hard to get married was past. I think now being an entrepreneur is a sexy thing, right? But yes, leaning on each other to find solutions. I think it comes instinctively. And it's also true about Silicon Valley. That's exactly what makes it special because nobody has answers. You are figuring out a solution to a problem. There is no reference. There is no template. There is no rule book or playbook. Hence, you only have each other to hold and move ahead, right? Second is, I think, because most of these people are first generation entrepreneurs. It's their money. What Nandan Nilekani does with his money, he doesn't have to ask a bunch of cousins and bunch of people to get their nod to take a decision what he does with his time and money, right? He was founder of Infosys, but he decided to exit, right? And he's doing a bunch of other things. Even his time, he's not hostage how he allocates. My co-founder, Prashant Prakash, and what he's doing. I mean, he's, of course, venture capital, Axel India founding partner. But now he's doing a bunch of other things from Saving Lakes, which is United Way Bengaluru, to building an agri-tech platform, which is Krishi Kalpa. And then more recently we have sort of launched an initiative on building a platform where all initiatives within the country, all research happening in the country around aging and how to increase health span besides age span is this platform is doing. Now he's doing all that. This is despite his VC job at Axel India, right?
To get back to the other part of the question, which is about the other kinds of migrants who come to Bangalore.
So, Sandip, when you read headlines, you rarely get that picture, right? That side of it. But tech industry has spawned a multiple sort of services sector. And services is one part, that is infrastructure. This has been the biggest growth hub for commercial real estate. Ditto for real residential. And construction is a big industry. Think of all the guards, all the construction workers, all the fittings and bathroom, interior designers, interiors of the house, everything. And not just that. Now think of all the cooks, drivers, guards, nannies, salons, even therapists, dog walkers, dog clinics, pet clinics, all that. And when you talk to some of those people, two things sort of occurred to me, Sandip. And I speak of relative experience vis-a-vis Delhi. One thing that strikes you is the diversity of that class. Even just looking at the house help that I've hired over the last 1 to 2 years that I've been here, from Nepal to Orissa to Tamil Nadu to Kerala to UP to Bihar to Assam and to Calcutta and Bengal.
Is there nobody from Karnataka?
There is. You presume that people will be from Karnataka, right? You presume that. And I'm taking that for granted. And you see that. You don't see that diversity in Delhi. 100%. Two, what strikes me is I find women in that class. Women staying alone and navigating their lives, earning a living and sending money back home. I did look at census data and it kind of corroborates that. I'm only presuming that the trend would have amplified and gotten stronger over the last 10, 12, 15 years. The third bit that also occurs to me is the rate of growth, especially people who've done well in that class, in their income trajectory. I find they're able to earn much higher as they grow. Right now, since we are working on a data report, that data report is corroborating some of these evidence that I had gathered during reportage, that a cook's salary, a driver's salary, a salon hairstylist salary is growing rapidly simply because talent supply mismatch. And what also has happened is in the 80s and 90s, mostly, the southern part of the country flocked to Bangalore. Geographical proximity, cultural proximity, and all that played an important role, right? I think now increasingly, because of availability of jobs, which is the quantity, and quality of jobs, which is salary and growth possibilities, more and more the catchment area is going farther and farther and farther.
But at the same time, Malini, you talk in the book about, and it's obvious in people who come to places like Bangalore, then they get fleeced. They are confined in places sometimes because whoever is the agent who's brought them, some security guard company, promises of security guard, there's a lot of fraud. Yeah, and of course, the one we did see in the news, one was after COVID, people trying to get out of Bangalore, and the northeastern scare and you talk to Manipuris who face chinky slurs routinely. Is that a growing problem where the cosmopolitanism of Bengaluru, where almost every other person is actually from outside the state, can exacerbate this issue of, oh my God, these people from outside are overrunning us and, hey, if you're in my auto, you talk to me in Kannada, otherwise I'm not going to go anywhere?
So again, 2-3 parts to the answer, Sandip. One is, think of Bangalore as a microcosm of what India is, especially if you look at that strata of the society. India's workforce, a large part of it is unorganized and casualized, right? The work standards, certain statutory benefits that you speak about. In the informal segment, it's a challenge across the board, including NCR, including Bangalore, including Bombay, all parts of the country. It's a problem, and Bangalore has its share, right? And it's only gotten intensified. That's one. So what you're talking about is contractors mistreating labor contracts that was verbally assured and given was not honored. It's something you will experience across the board in the informal, casualized labor workforce. It is true for Bangalore as much as for others. What probably is the changing part is, this was a city which is culturally very absorbing, inclusive, right? No matter where you came from, this city just embraced this insider-outsider thing that you are hearing about, right? That's relatively new. A part of it you should also attribute to the political sort of narrative, right? Political undercurrent. That definitely is. And also that is emerging out of the fact that this city has grown so rapidly. See, if you look at Delhi has had decades and maybe centuries when it has arrived at a place that Delhi is either nobody's city or everybody's city, right? In Bangalore, the growth has been dramatic and crunched in short span. What is 2 or 3 decades in the life of a city? This was a small town, a cantonment city till 80s, right? Little small town with its parks, pubs, clubs, lakes, all that. And overnight, in 3 decades, this is a global tech hub, attracting talent, top talent, not just from India, but across the world. So you know what, Santosh Desai, who is a great observer of social changes that's happening around, he says this city has this feeling of being run over by people who are coming from all over the city, right? But I also feel this is a city in transition. All global cities go through it. And Bangalore has to navigate this part as well. Where this was this small town, it has become this global tech hub, but in its mind, in its culture, in its mental construct, it has to undergo that transition to emerge as a global tech hub. And I think we are in the midst of that transition.
In fact, you make the point, Malini, in the book that at one time, if there was a divide, it was between Kannada and Tamil, which is sort of exemplified by the fight over the sharing of the waters of the Kaveri River. Now that has shifted more into, issues like North and South, North Indian and South Indian. But when you talk about this sort of the liberal cosmopolitan nature of Bengaluru, which draws people in, an important statistic, which is not that surprising in some ways, is that, for example, Bengaluru has the highest percentage of nuclear families in the country, much higher than Delhi or Bombay. And it has the greatest number of two-member households. And I was curious whether we have, this being away from the parental eye, which allows people to sort of invent their own rules about how to live their lives and negotiate gender roles, which is possible in Bengaluru. Do we have data on whether interstate, intercaste, interfaith marriages are also higher in Bengaluru?
We are constrained. We don't have current data, but the census data of 2011, which is prehistory in Bangalore's context.
Right.
But there are 2-3 things that sort of occurred, and some of them you've already mentioned. Double income households with no kids are higher as a percentage than other cities. 2 single household where women are working is also higher. And that is also true in the lower segment, which is the ripple effect. So beyond the tech industry, you are seeing all that there, right? So some data, but anecdotally, I can tell you that I see it all around me. And remember, all the narrative that you hear on the digital platforms are bubbles. We all know that. And they amplify. The nuance many times is gone, but nevertheless, they do sort of signal what's going on in the city at a macro level. This city is a young city and visibly young city. Go to any parts of the city and you'll get that campus vibe. Young men, young women hanging around all times of the day. This city, I feel in many ways, is a sandbox. Tech sandbox, consumer sandbox, cultural sandbox, societal shift sandbox, all that. So based on over 40 such conversations that I've done for that chapter, 4 things that emerged to me. That many of these young people with high disposable income, well educated, well heeled, so that means they can move anywhere in the world, choose here, and they bring a certain experimentation to how they live their life. They are willing to try new things, either in their relationships, how they live their lives, either it's pet parenting or new norms of interpersonal relationship. Remember, many of these people, even if they're not staying with their girlfriend or boyfriends, they are staying with their friends. So it's kind of a hostile dorm environment, right? Now, right from how they look at sex, partnerships, romantic relationships, the ties that they are forging together, the sorority, right? All that is an interesting sort of playfield for any social scientist to look at what it is doing. For example, what have digital platforms done to our world of love, sex, and romance? I see that play out so well in this city.
In fact, Malini, I should, for our listeners, point out a very important statistic in this regard, which is that the time taken between connecting with someone on a dating app and then meeting at home is the shortest in Bengaluru as compared to Delhi or Mumbai.
I just want to sort of inform how I arrived at it so that it's not just anecdotal. So we, of course, tapped into truly madly platform data and to get a sense of it. 2, I spoke to therapists who are having conversations with young people. And 3rd, young people themselves, young people who've dated in multiple cities, and they are talking to me about it. And interestingly, the journey from connecting on app to meeting at home was the shortest in Bangalore, longest in Delhi, and for many it never happened in Bombay. And the reasons are very interesting. So in Delhi, I think the trust factor played a very, very important role. Women reaching a point of comfort and relative feeling of security and safety. They often did in-app, within-app conversation for almost 3 months, many of them, before finding the courage to exchange numbers and meet in person. Okay. In Bombay, due to high real estate cost, privacy at home is an important factor to factor in, right? Many times people are still staying with their parents. In Bangalore, they're away from their parents. In fact, a whole lot of them are staying away from their parents. They are staying with their friends, if at all they are sharing their residence with other people who are totally okay, getting your girlfriend home, whatever. Safety factor is an important factor. In fact, I've spoken to people who within 3 days, within a week, have met in person and actually gone home, right? And I didn't realize that these factors could so dramatically shape our romantic lives, right? And also the dating pool that they spoke about, I mean, which I think is very interesting. I was speaking to one guy who dated in Delhi, Bombay, Pune, and Bangalore, and he was in his early 30s. And he said early 30s and single is you are over the hill in Pune. The dating pool just does not exist because the women are all married, right? Delhi had the problem that I already flagged. In Bangalore, he got a better pool to sort of get into.
But so despite all these sort of wonderful plus points, why did the annual livability index of 2022 call Bengaluru the least livable city in India among the 5 it analyzed?
So, infrastructure is an important part, Sandip. And as I said, 2G hardware, 5G software. If you want to look at Bangalore, I think that's a good sort of representation of how the challenges, highs and lows of the city. And there are 2-3 aspects to the city's challenges. One is that because the city has grown so rapidly, and I remember talking to Chinmay Tumbe, who's a migration expert, right, at IIM Ahmedabad, and he was speaking about this kind of growth is almost unprecedented in the world, not just in India. Okay. This is one of the fastest growing city in the world and crunched in too short a time. So the pace of growth is so dramatic that any city would have been overwhelmed. Point number 2 is remember that this is a city in India where the planning, the infrastructure, almost all cities, Delhi, Bombay, have grappled with. Delhi has a problem. Delhi has a problem with pollution. We started with that. It's the capital city. It's a darling of country. I don't think it's bereft of any resources or attention. And yet the city has, I remember being in Delhi in the late 90s and early 2000. It had pollution problem. It had transport problem. Supreme Court came down heavily for CNG buses. Metro wasn't working and we woke up late that city needs a metro, right? So second part is that it's an Indian city where planning and investment in city infrastructure always come with a huge lag. Okay. And it is not new for Bangalore. It is all Indian cities. Some cities may be benefiting from a certain approach that their political stakeholders have taken. And I would put Hyderabad there, right? Third part, I think, which is unique to Bangalore is the political sort of landscape of the city. There are 2 things that stands out. One is the political churn. Since the 80s, not a single party has come back to power for the second time. And what it tells you that political volatility means that constancy of the policy making or a vision for the city. There's no long term. You come here for 5 years, and I have a bureaucrat, Chiranjeev Singh, who speaks about, forget 5 years, they have 3-year horizon, right? They want to come, do things that show quick result in 3 years, because, then it's time to go for the election. And political churn does bring enormous volatility and short-term approach to planning the city. So that is the other one. And third, which is also important, is that often you will find, especially this is true for the last decade or so, or maybe more, is that the government here and the government at the center are in dissonance. So if NDA is here, then the Congress, the UPA is at the center, or UPA is here, NDA is at the center. And that means the alignment, the double engine sarkar and the benefits of it that you speak about often doesn't accrue to the city. And finally, remember that in Karnataka, Bangalore is Karnataka's economic engine. It has a disproportionate share of the economic outcomes of the state. And what this demands is that there should be some kind of at least relative higher attention on Bangalore vis-a-vis other hubs. But that you don't get simply because political stakeholders have political reasons to deploy resources and attention.
You mentioned that, Malini, but one would think that in a city that has so much economic clout, if all these VCs and tech and in the Nandan Nilakanis and all went as one to a chief minister and said, you have to fix this infrastructure problem in this city, that the chief minister would be bound to notice and pay, give them attention. Like, how can you ignore these people?
I can tell you that T.V. Mohandas Pai, and he is one of the earliest senior executives and now chairman at Manipal Group Education Wing. And also he speaks often in social media platforms. He spoke about how he's gone to so many chief ministers. I think he remembers 5. He's gone to 5. And when he says he's gone to 5, it's not him alone. I'm sure he's rallied everybody together to the government. Everybody promises, but they have not been able to deliver.
Right, because the person promises by the time they need to deliver, they're out of power.
Absolutely. So projects that is being envisaged today, suppose tomorrow elections happen, state elections, and there is a change of political regime, there's a complete reset, no? And not having a master plan for the city only makes things worse.
Is the city also in some ways a victim of its own success, in the sense, I mean, that these startups, these apps, this sort of meteoric growth of the city in a very short period of time that you were talking about, that are part of the attraction of the city, does that also create, apart from infrastructure, a problem of much higher burnout? The fact that people live away from families and can create is a plus, but it also means in a sort of community, family-oriented society like India, when you feel alone, you're very alone. So people talk about Bengaluru being the suicide capital of India and things like that. So is that an aside of the startup frenzy, as it were? Is it also burnout capital of India?
So, see, what strikes you, Sandip, when you look around is the peaks and troughs, and they are very sharp. And I've seen this around me. And I work out of a co-working hub, right? It's an incubation where startups and startup founders are operating. You will see founders one day ecstatic about the wins, and 4 weeks, 6 weeks later, going through their own sort of existential crisis. And it is by nature, the tech industry by nature is cyclical. It's not just India, not just Bangalore. Tech industry is like that. The peaks and troughs, the churn, the reinvention, the reset is far higher than any other sector. So that, and city experiences its share of it. Second is that this is a city of young, because all these tech people and stuff. So remember, their personal life is also going through these peaks and troughs. And away from their parents, think of the anchorings in their life. Friendships are increasingly fickle and short-term. Even their romantic sort of relationship. I think many of it is a factor of 21st century digital platform, dating platform era, right? Our relationships are becoming shallower. Friendships are becoming shallower. You see that play out. I'm sure it is playing out across our big cities and across global big cities. But you get to see that more prominently in this city simply because that cohort is pretty big, pretty dominant here.
And when we talk about solutions, is there also a problem, and I'm just putting this out as a theory, that in a city that is so used to startups and big, exciting ideas, it means that people are, want technocratic solutions and are impatient for change, whereas many of these problems that you're saying, the infrastructure problems, require a lot more patience and humility than tech is known for.
Water scarcity, roads, garbage, all that are hard problems and there are no easy solutions. But remember that what you are telling me is also what you are getting from the bubble, Twitter bubble, right? And Twitter will always, and social media platforms will always be bubble. Either Bangalore is a fantastic city with no comparison, or it's a terrible city like shithole. I think for all our cities have problems. Delhi has pollution problem, Bombay's real estate problem, and many other problems. Bangalore has its own share of problem. I think there is a nuance that is required if one has to understand our city fully. Now the problems and the solutions, well, some of them are for optics. Let's talk about the water problem, right? Now, how do we harvest rainwater? How do we solve the problem? This city has one of the highest number of activists working in grassroots. right from borewell recharge. Like these are unsexy problem you will not hear of, but that is happening on the ground. There is Vishwanathan, who's called Rain Man. He's working with many people to recharge the borewell water. So those initiatives are happening. But of course, there are things happening in the social media and also sometimes in reality for optics. But I find in this city, RWAs, people far more aware, about footprint, carbon footprint, encroachment. And then, of course, there is the other story of the growth overwhelming many of these efforts. But yeah, that's probably how I would put it in a more nuanced manner.
How long have you been here, Malini?
So since 2001, August, September, when I came here. So that's the time frame that I have been. But I feel that because I had to immerse myself so deeply into the city to be able to put the book. So initial 2 years, almost 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, I was just out reporting, trying to make sense of the city. And, many times I feel that I wish I'd spent that much more time living in Delhi and trying to sort of get into the nuts of it, okay? But I've lived in Delhi for 35 years.
So how long do you think you have to live in a city like Bengaluru for, as, even as a North Indian, when we talked about some of the anti-North Indian feelings that are there, and I don't know whether you've experienced it, but how long would you have to live in a city like Bengaluru to call yourself a Bangalorean?
I would put it like differently. There are different shades of Bangaloreans, okay? And you will find somebody who's come here in 2 years, and I know so many people like that, who've been a Delhiite all their lives, and they say that they found their family and friends here. But there are different shades of Bangaloreans. As I said, some people have been born and brought up here. Some people have embraced the city. This is their adopted city. Some people have come here and lived here for 30 years and still feel Chennai is their root. Chennai is their city.
And you? I'm putting you on the spot here. And you?
Within a year of shifting here, Sandip, I sold off my Delhi home, which was a home for over 25 years for me. And I bought a place here. And this is home. It is as Bangalorean as I can get. But obviously, I am not from the city. From that point of view, in the sense, I'm not born and brought up in the city. I'm still to learn Kannada. So that is there. But in terms of because I'm working on this project, right, I definitely bring my passion and everything to make this project work. So when I came here, Sandip, I was here not to shift here. I didn't come here to shift at all, actually. I thought I will report here. I'll go back, write this book in Delhi, and that I'm done. I'm a Delhi person with a home. My entire family is there. My parents, my sisters, everybody. And then I came here, then I realized that, this going back and forth and reportage, I need to immerse myself in this city. And then I said, okay, 1 year in this city. Within months, this project, which began as a book. And one day I'm telling Prashant, my co-founder, that Prashant, I think this city should document its tech journey. And we should look at a digital museum for the city. He says, why digital museum? I said, no, physical museum will require a capex, right? I mean, who wants to imagine that? He said, no, let's think about it. And you know what? As of today, we are actively exploring building India's first startup tech innovation museum, which will be world-class, highly experiential, something similar to what Jeff Bezos Center in Seattle or Paris Center for Innovation in Tel Aviv looks like. And this is bit by bit. So this project got added. Then I said, book. How do you cater to Gen Z and Gen Alpha? Who will not pick up a book? We should do docu-series. Then he said, yeah, we should make that happen. Now we are working on a 6-part docu-series on Bangalore, right? Then I said, the journalist in me was thinking that I was working on the book. All data on Bangalore looks so dated. It's terrible. And there is not enough depth and informed data-led understanding of the city. So I wanted to put together a data report on Bangalore, not for economists, but layperson to make sense of what's going on in the city. Now for the last 8 months, we are working on a data report on Bangalore. It's an annual data report. It will give you a view of Bangalore through 3 lenses: Bangalore today versus Bangalore past, Bangalore versus other Indian cities like Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore versus other global tech hubs like Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, Berlin, London, New York, etc., etc. And we'll triangulate data, we'll collate data from multiple sources: regulatory, government, satellite, digital platform, all that to make sense of it. City festival as well we are doing, and we are now working on how to solve cities' water problem that we discussed. We've got government support. We've got all city stakeholders joining hands for our different projects. The power to imagine, dream, and rally people, stakeholders together to make things happen. If this was not happening, this project, Unboxing BLR Foundation, would not have been possible.
Well, I wish you enormous luck with Unboxing BLR. I mean, it's a huge project that you've undertaken, but it seems like it's a city that deserves it. So thank you so much for joining us, Malini Goyal.
Thanks, Sandip. Lovely to speak to you. And absolutely, it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Unboxing Bengaluru, the City of New Beginnings, is a deep dive into the city by Malini Goyal, a business journalist for over 25 years, and Prashant Prakash, a founding partner of the global venture capital firm Accel Partners in India. They are the co-founders of Unboxing BLR Foundation, a not-for-profit platform focused on documenting Bengaluru's rise as a global tech hub. Malini Goyal joined us on the show. This show was produced by Shashank Bhargava and edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. Thanks for listening. This is Sandip Roy on Express Audio.